The VIVO quad monitor stand model 104a holds 4 full 32-inch monitors, or smaller. It has a clamp option for the back, or you can mount it right in the surface of a table. It has 2 telescoping arms that allow you to wrap your monitors around you, and it also has a nice tilt down on the top. Overall, nice adjustability with some constraints. Let's go over the planning and the assembly. So the objective for me in this particular stand was to hang my new Samsung U32J590 UHD high definition 4K monitor. I kept my old 27-inch monitor, I kept my old 24-inch monitor, I mounted those on the side, and I mounted a 32-inch TV I had laying around on the top. I'm using this for photo and video. To accommodate this stand, I have a donor 25-inch deep by 55-inch wide desk with a pull-out keyboard tray. With my 25-inch deep desk, the keyboard tray pulled out, the monitor tower clamped on the back of the desk. My eyes are about 35 to 38 inches from the display. Peripheral vision is good. I still have to turn my head a little bit to see the monitors, and keep in mind I don't have a full 32-inch on the two sides. Further away, the UHD would probably be a little bit harder to read. If you're using the mounting hole option to drill in the desk, here's some dimensions you can expect. A 2-inch deep monitor would have its surface about 7.6 inches from the center of the post. Limited to a single wide video slot in my old computer, I'm using a Quadro K4200 card, and it has 1 DVI port and 2 display ports. With some dumb luck and a little bit of calculating, my monitor layout worked out really great, but in hindsight, there's some things I can teach you to help your layout go better. If you had 4 identical monitors, and you'll probably be okay. If you had smaller than 32 inch, you'd probably be okay because there's lots of adjustability with smaller than 32 inch, but there are a couple items you need to be aware of. If you're mixing monitors, you're going to have a little bit more work in front of you. The center mounts are different from the arm mounts. They have about 3 inches of adjustability in them. Keep in mind you can move the monitor assembly up and down on the center post about 1 5/16 inch per increment. The side ones have a little bit of adjustability, about 3/4 of an inch. I really think that's to adjust for any sagging in the arms, should you have any. So let's go over the formula to calculate your height and spacing. I recommend you lay out your monitors flat on a surface. I would at least lay the 2 center monitors because those are the ones you have to do the most work on. If you plan on angling forward your top monitor, you need at least 1 inch gap between the top and bottom. Measure from the top center Vesa mount to the bottom center Vesa mount, and you want to write down that measurement. Next, you want to estimate how high you want the monitor from the surface. To do this, sit down in a chair at a location in front of where you want to mount the monitor stand. Looking straight forward, you want to measure the distance of your eyes from the surface of the desk, and write that down. Now, in most cases, I like looking in the top 25% of the monitor if I'm looking straight forward. So for you, you want to determine where that position is. So if you want to look 3 inches down from the top of your monitor, on the monitor you have flat on the surface, you're going to measure 3 inches down from the top of the bottom monitor. Now you're going to measure from that position to the bottom of the monitor. Deduct the distance from your eye height to the bottom of the monitor from your eye height over the desk. That is the estimate of the distance of how far the monitor will be above the desk. Now you want to add back the distance from the bottom of the monitor to the center of the Vesa plate. And that's the estimated distance from the desk surface to the center of your bottom mounting cup. Now take that first measurement we made, which was the distance between the Vesa mounts on the top and bottom monitor, and we need to calculate on the pole about the configuration we need for that. Keep in mind, because the center mounts adjust up and down 3 inches, you have a couple different positions that might fit your solution, so you might want to pick one that has adjustability. Another item you need to be aware of in doing your layout is that adjustability of 3 inches is only partially usable. Say you had 3 monitors on the bottom that were all the same. The center position only aligns with the outer 2 arms at one location, which is just a little bit down from the top. So you can't actually lower it down 2 inches and have it even with 2 identical monitors out on the side. And on the bottom, you can only have the adjustment in one position to even out across all of the monitors. If you have different monitors on the bottom, we'll go over in a minute how to level them all out. The top monitor maximum spacing is 22.5 inches, but that's only if you can use the lower mount at 5 inches off the desk. The instructions did not say that you could flip the top mount over to increase the gap, but it also doesn't say you can't. With the top mount flipped, which would probably reduce the weight rating, the max distance you can attain is probably in the neighborhood of 24 inches. Again, the bottom cup would be all the way down about 5 inches off the desk. The problem I encountered is the Vesa spread between my top monitor and my bottom monitor was 22 inches. But the maximum spread I can get on the mounting cups maintaining the distance I want off the desk is only 19.2 inches. The solution to the 22-inch gap not fitting on the 19-inch mounting points was to put a 200 by 200 Vesa adapter plate on the TV. The adapter plate mounts centered over the 100 by 200. I drilled some holes so that I could leverage the corner to mount the 100 by 200 position on the TV, and then I drilled new holes for the 100 by 100 plate that attaches to the tower. The 100 by 200 mount change lowered it by about 2 inches, and then lowering the 100 by 100 plate gave me about another 1.5 inches. Now I actually didn't lay out the monitors first. After I put the center monitor on, I measured from the top of the center monitor to the cup position. And then I went to the back of the television and I measured from the bottom of the television to that cup position, deducting 1 inch because I wanted that 1 inch gap. I actually went about 1.5 inches because I figured I could adjust out of it. If I was actually too close, I couldn't fix it if I was at the maximum adjustment on the 3-inch adjustment on the tower. The next thing to consider is tilting the top monitor. If you had all the same monitor and they were all the same depth, when you tilt the top monitor, it's actually going to be behind the bottom monitor. If you want to try to get those two surfaces closer together, you need to space out the top monitor with some spacers. Also, the distance and position it's going to be behind the top monitor depends on your pivot point on your monitor, so you might need some trial and error to get the right spacing. If you're using M4 bolts, it's nice because they give you some long ones in with the kit. So now let's talk about turning your monitor. I can turn my 24-inch monitor and it actually sits flat on the desk. To turn it, I actually have to flip it out beyond the desk and then turn it and bring it back to the desk. In reality, it doesn't do anything good for me because at 1080p, my center monitor has more resolution and height than the width of the monitor. So if I turn it sideways, its height is still smaller than my center monitor. As I sit here talking to you, I'm looking at 3 full pages in a Microsoft Word document on one display with no problems at all. So if you had 3 32-inch monitors, odds are you're not going to be able to turn the ones on the side. On VIVO's website, they show a configuration with some monitors turned. So let's take a look at that because it's kind of a learning experience. These appear not to be 32-inch monitors. This gives them a lot more room for adjustability. Also, if you look at the back, the side monitors are different from the center monitors. On the center monitor, it appears that the Vesa Mount point is a little bit lower, whereas the ones on the side is in the center. To compensate for this, they have to lower the center adjustment down 2 to 3 inches. Lowering the center mount point in this configuration allows the side monitors to have a higher pivot point because the extension bars are higher than the center monitor, and that leaves room for them to turn. So this is kind of how I leveled out my monitors. They're 2 inches difference, but my center mount point, I had to lower it 2 inches to make room for the top monitor. In doing so, I evened out the difference between the 6-inch offset on my side monitors and the 4-inch offset on my center monitor. I didn't really calculate that, it just happened by dumb luck. So these are all variables to think about if you're going to be turning your monitor, or if you need to level them because they have different offsets on their Vesa mount points. Now it's time to go over assembly. Okay, let's get everything unboxed and laid out on the table. All of the parts come in individual packages. My recommendation is to not open the package until you need a part. And in the cases where you only need one part out of the package, break it out of the sides so you don't mix it up with the other pieces. After you get all the parts laid out, locate the clamp and the clamp brace. If you're going to use the clamp, you need to make sure you have a place to mount it. In my case, I had to make a hole to mount the plate. The hole should be centered right in front of where your keyboard is going to be. In this case, there was a cable hole there, so I just made that hole rectangular. Now, in assembling the clamp, there's 3 positions you can assemble the clamp in. The threads are on the smaller piece. I positioned mine at the hole closest to the bend because my deck is only 3/4 of an inch thick, and that seemed to be the best position and reduce the amount of flex that it would have in the connection. Go ahead and screw your clamp together. If you're going to mount the tower in the middle of the desk, you have to go ahead and drill a hole in the correct position. You're going to go ahead and put the pad on the bottom of the tower, have somebody hold the tower on the top, then you're going to go underneath. You're going to put the lock washer on the bolt, then the washer on the bolt, and then you're going to push the bolt through the plate and you're going to screw it into the bottom of the tower. Make sure you snug that up nicely, and make sure that in both cases, as we're mounting the tower, make sure that the oval is facing the back of the tower. After you get the 4 screws on holding the tower, make sure you find that plastic dome and put it over top, because if you forget to put it on, you won't be able to slide it on after you put the brackets in. As we go through the next few steps, they tell you to put the monitor arm covers on, the little plastic covers that go on the joints. I recommend holding off on that because you might want to tighten the joints up, and you have to keep peeling them off to tighten the joints up. The next thing you're going to do is locate your arm assembly. You need the V-shaped center arm assembly and then the 2 extension arms that go on. You're also going to need the mounting bolts to connect the joints. Before you put it together, you have to get the orientation right. What they want you to do is look for these cable management holes that are on the arms. That should be on the bottom. To assemble the arms, it's probably easier to leave the center assembly on the table, because you need to take the plastic pads and you need to hold them on both sides of the extension arm, and you need to push it into the joint and then put the bolt in. Once the bolt's in, go ahead and tighten that up, and you can tighten that up nice and snug. We won't be loosening it up again. Now take a moment to look at your arm and make sure that the extension arm you put on, that again, the hole is on the bottom. So we're pretty far along here because now you can take that assembly and you can put it on your center post. Now when you slide it down, be careful because you might scratch the paint if you want to not scratch the paint. And you want to move it down to somewhere in the neighborhood of the height that you calculated in the previous formula. Once you find your position, you might have to use the Allen wrench to hold the bolt as you try to get it threaded. Be very careful not to cross thread them because they are tapped, and go ahead and get that thing started and then tighten up your center arm. So if you think you have a good calculation of your top monitor position, you can go ahead and mount that on the post right now. You can always move these later. They're just going to be a little harder with the monitor. You might have to take the monitor off to reduce the weight, or you could possibly move the monitor on with some help. The next thing we're going to do is attach our VESA plates to the back of our monitors. Keep in mind that the center VESA plates are different from the side. The center ones are V-shaped, the side ones are more rectangular on the mount. So make sure you use them in the right position. The next pointer is the bent tab that's on the mount goes towards the top of the monitor. That is where you're going to put the bolt to secure the plate to prevent the monitor from falling off. So once you figure out which plates you're going to use where, you have to go about figuring out which bolts you're going to use. The first thing you should always do is take the bolt and turn it into the hole by hand. You want to know about where the bottom of the hole is if you don't have a document that tells you how long it can go in. In that position, what you want to do is measure how much thread you have left. If you can't put the bolt all the way in, you have to put a spacer in to bring it out to cover that amount of thread. If for some reason you have to use a VESA mounting plate, I have an entire video dedicated to the mounting plates that I used. But keep in mind that on the mounting plates I used the thumb screws, and the thumb screws went into the plate, so you have to account for that extra distance. Whereas on the mounts that came with the unit, the screw sits on the surface of the plate. In some cases, I had to put some washers between the thumb screw and the plate to keep the screw from bottoming out in the monitor. Now this kit's nice. It also gives you some long M4 screws, assuming you use M4. If you don't have what you need in your kit, you can usually get this kind of stuff at your local hardware store. Again, try to estimate the size you need so you buy about the right length. Now in some mounts you might find they're recessed on the back of the monitor. In those cases, use the spacers to bring the mounting position out beyond the outer edge of the monitor, and then you go ahead and mount the plate there. Again, you'll have to adjust the screws to the proper length. So the first thing you want to do is mount your bottom center monitor. Once you get the monitor mounted, you want to put the safety screw in so that it doesn't accidentally fall out while you're using it. If you find it's loose or at the wrong angle, you'll see there's a little Allen wrench in the cup. That is the tension hole. So you tighten that set screw and it'll keep the monitor in the position that you want. So if you didn't do all those funny calculations in the beginning and you want to mount your top monitor, this would be the part where you measure from the top of the bottom monitor to the cup above. Then you take that measurement, measure from the bottom of the top monitor to 1 inch, at least 1 inch below that if you're going to use an angle, maybe 1.5 inches, and that is about where you want your top VESA mount to go on the back of the monitor. If you're going to mount an adapter plate, that's where you're going to put your mark. And if that measurement is above the center of the VESA mount position on the top monitor, you don't need any adapter plate. Mount the one that came with the stand and go forward. Before you put it up there, make sure that bent over piece of metal that we use to secure the monitor from falling off is facing upward, because that will be the top of the bracket. You're going to take your monitor and you're going to set it up there, and again, immediately put the set screw in so that your monitor doesn't fall out on you. Now, before you go on to do the side monitors, I'm going to tell you right now, take the wrench and go tighten up the joint at the side monitor, particularly the one that tilts the monitor forward and backward. Because when you put your monitor on out of the box, you'll see this online too with multiple people in their pictures, your monitor is going to want to flip over forward because those bolts are pretty loose. So go ahead and snug that bolt up, and then we're going to go ahead and mount your monitor. So the same thing, make sure that bent piece of metal that's going to secure your monitor is on the top. You'll see that there's a screw post already in there. That's to adjust the monitor up and down up to about 3/4 inch. There's actually a nut that goes on top of this one to hold it in place. So if you had to adjust it, you take the nut off, you put an Allen wrench in the hole, you adjust it up and down a little bit, then put the nut back on. And that crown nut is what holds the monitor in place for safety. So go ahead and mount your first monitor, mount your second one, and then you can go about adjusting them to the position you want. So at this point, go ahead and click your cable management in the hole. If your monitor joints are pretty tight, you can go ahead and put all those plastic covers on, and all that should be set. Now you're ready to look at wiring. Because I didn't anticipate how long it was going to be from my computer on the side of the desk to the furthest monitor, I managed to make all the ones I have reach, but eventually I have to order some new ones. So while the cable management guides underneath are nice, order yourself a roll of Velcro cable management wraps because what you're going to find is where the monitors turn and stuff, it's better to secure the cable so they have a little bit of a service loop there. So every time your monitor turns, it doesn't rip the connectors out. Also makes it look a little neater. Of course, if this is up against the wall, nobody's ever going to see it anyways. As far as running your cables through the tube, there's a cover on the top of the tower. You can pull that cover out, and you can run the cables down, some of the cables if you want. I opted to strap mine around the outside, and because it's much easier to change things in the future. Because my desk is floating in the middle of the room, and it's the first thing you're going to see when you walk in, I am trying to keep the cables a little neat. And one of the things I did is I drilled another cable management hole in the back of the desk, and I put the power and a lot of the audio under the desk. The other thing I did is I built a little house to hold a bunch of transformers because several of my monitors have transformers, as do some of my accessories. So the transformers are up on the shelf. There's a plug strip off to the side. And then this speaker kit had a subwoofer, so I tucked that under the desk as well. So now it's time to crawl down under your desk and make sure that those clamps you put on earlier are nice and snug. You can stick a screwdriver in there. Don't go absurd, but make sure they're good and tight because you don't want that tower to actually fall off on you. The tower should be fairly stable. Mine doesn't wobble too much. Most of the wobble you actually see is the desk flexing. Now in my case, when I was done, my speakers were on the desk and it was a little cluttering. So I made some brackets to go on the back of the monitor stand, and my speakers actually sit above my two side monitors facing down, which is actually really nice. They're kind of at ear level. I used it for about a week, and then it was time to illuminate it some. So what I opted to do was to put some LED strip lighting underneath the monitors. I decided on single color. I used a 4mm strip, which is really tiny and a little difficult to work with, but one of the monitors didn't have a lot of space. And what I did is I mounted those LED lights behind the bezel on the bottom. The bezel, it's not very high, but what it does, it masks the LEDs so you don't actually see the LED light, but you see the illumination from it. I ran the LEDs from the end of each monitor, which meant that I had to run a cable from the end of the monitor to the center post. So what I did is when I got to the video cable, I kind of strapped it along, ran all those cables down under the desk, and I put a junction there for all of the lights under the LED monitors. I also took an old piece of window screen aluminum and I screwed that under the desk, and I mounted some LED lights over my keyboard and over my side drawer. Because the monitor on the left actually extends out beyond the desk, it also illuminates over top of my computer. I put a dimmer switch under here, so I have dimmer control. These lights were pretty bright. And because I want the lights easily controlled, they're turned on by motion sensor as I sit down at the desk. So you're going to have a couple extra parts left over. You'll see that whichever bracket you didn't use is going to be here, so you want to save those parts. You have the tools. They did give you a couple extra plastic caps, which is good because they're actually press-on, and with time they can peel a little bit and not hold in as well. You're also going to find they gave you 16 M4 screws, rather long ones, a couple of centimeters long, and they also gave you the thumb screws in the quantity of 16. So you're going to have 16 of something left if you had M4 on all your monitors. In my kit, there was nothing missing, so I didn't have to call the company. They do have a good website, so hopefully their support is pretty good. This bracket is quite robust. It is really heavy. I don't think I'm going to have any problems with it. There's no way it's ever going to bend. I did adjust my right monitor up about 1 centimeter to even it out better. You can see the slightest bit of sag in the arm extensions on the side. It's really irrelevant, but they do give you that adjustment at the top to compensate for it. Overall, I'm very satisfied with this product. It was a reasonable price product. It's very high quality, and it was quite easy to assemble. It has nice adjustability, and with a little bit of dumb luck, everything aligned perfectly.